Hi, I am Lucky Ladybug, and today I just wanted to do a fun little video about my Kingdom Hearts stories. I don't know if anyone who watches the videos also reads the stuff I write. For like a couple of years now, or maybe more like a year and a half, I've been writing some new Final Fantasy VII stories in the timeline I started like 19 years ago. But I've started a new timeline for Kingdom Hearts instead of continuing the old one. Now, why did I do that? Many reasons, mainly because the old timeline came out before even Birth by Sleep came out. And I didn't investigate Birth by Sleep for years, at least not properly, because I knew it had a Zack in it, and then I knew that my stories would not align with Birth by Sleep. So I didn't investigate it to see if I could do anything with it. But when I finally did, I got ideas for the canon version of Zack in Kingdom Hearts and a new backstory for Sephiroth that I think is much better than the old one I did. And I had a KH Seph in my old timeline, but of course his story was much different than the official one. I think the only games out at the time I was doing that was 1 and 2 and Chain of Memories. And I write Sephiroth so much different now than I did in the old timeline. You know, I still like the old Kingdom Hearts stories. I think they had some good ideas, but the last time I reread one of the darker ones, I kind of got depressed by it. I had him have this very, very convoluted backstory where he fell into his darkness and died, and then he was sent back with the wings and told to try to keep Cloud from making his same mistakes. So he was bound to Cloud and resented it, and Cloud hated him. And somehow they eventually managed to care deeply about each other, which was beautiful, but I don't like that explanation for his wings, and also the fact that he wasn't ever allowed to tell Cloud why he was bound to him or what had really happened to him. And, you know, I can't fathom that I had this poor Seph be seriously mauled by a dragon and permanently scarred and one of his wings damaged. I'd never want to do those things to him now. I want his wings to be just the way they are in canon, just beautiful and free, and enable him to fly just fine. Yes, I know it defies physics, but he does fly in canon, so apparently physics in Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy VII are not like real-world physics. Or it may just be because he's Sephiroth and special. Current timeline that I'm doing, it still has him have the original backstory of a Kingdom Hearts Lucretia and Hojo being his parents, but his Lucretia being able to get him to kind adoptive parents. I guess she's more resourceful. She's able to bug out of there with him. Also, the fact Kingdom Hearts Hojo didn't kick her out right after Sephiroth's birth. So she was like there, and I think she was fully into the experimenting and stuff on him for like the first several years of his life. And then finally she realized, what the heck are we doing? Because she realized that Hojo wanted to operate on him to see what was going on with the wings. He was born in this timeline with the 2 lower wings, and then he retracted them out of fear and never brought them back out. And Hojo didn't know if the wings were still there. He wanted to run x-rays and do like a surgery to see what was going on in there. And then Lucretia's like, whoa, I'm not going to stand for that. She gets her kid out of there and gets him to good adoptive parents and then disappears. I do not know where the Kingdom Hearts Lucretia is right now, but she'll probably come into the stories eventually. And so I more fully embrace the magical nature of Kingdom Hearts. For some reason, I didn't so much in the old timeline. I was like stuck on more realistic things, which is dumb. And I guess that's why I didn't want him to have the wings from birth or something, but that was dumb. And so in the new timeline, he's born with fire powers as well as the 2 lower wings. And then he creates the top one later out of his strong emotions over his first heroic act. And I contrast him with Frozen's Elsa and the KH Seph, that he was raised in an environment where his parents were not afraid, the adoptive ones, and they knew and understood love was the key to controlling his powers. So he's much kinder and more easygoing than the old timeline KH Seph, who was very cold and would probably never dream of teasing and flirting with Cloud like the current one does. He's trying to help Cloud of his own free will and presents himself as an obstacle Cloud must overcome. That's the same as the old timeline. But he's not bound to him at all. So I think it's more powerful that he's helping of his own free will, and he's just putting himself in danger repeatedly, trying to help Cloud. And he's not being forced to by anybody. He's doing it on his own. I like that way better. And I more fully explore that he's had a happy upbringing and he chose to be a hero instead of it being forced on him. And how those things change his entire outlook on life and some aspects of his personality versus the KH Seph. So he's pretty different in some ways, but at his core, he's always Seph. He's a serious swordsman, dangerously overpowered, and a great fan of sarcastic cracks, because of course he is. And Cloud is different too. In the old timeline, it took so long for him to start to mature, even after seeing Sephiroth is not what he thought. On the other hand, I'm thinking things probably move too fast in the current timeline, but I like him being more receptive sooner. And then the biggest issue is like his domestic frustration over finding feathers everywhere in their house. He's got past that too now. And of course they don't get along perfectly, and they don't cuddle as much as I have their FF counterparts do in my current timeline, but you know, they also don't have the sheer amount of emotional and mental baggage that the FF ones do that makes them want to behave like that. And in any case though, the KH ones, they still manage to be more affectionate and open about their feelings than in the old timeline. But the new timeline isn't perfect. Like I say, I think maybe it moves things a little too fast, and I'm trying to slow it down now and fill in with some stories that take place earlier on. And one problem I ran into is when I tried to do a new version of my old story, God Help the Outcasts. In the original timeline, KH, Cloud, and Seph are both unfairly hated for their wings, and there's also Seph clones running around causing havoc, which doesn't help in the least. And none of that's the case in the current timeline, since it's more directly canon-based, at least as far as KH2 and Birth by Sleep. And some people do feel prejudice towards Cloud because of his bat wing, and I brought in that he always had this trouble with people prejudice against him, same as the FF one did growing up in Nibelheim. And well, anyway, since the whole outcast theme was kind of a huge part of the original Hunchback of Notre Dame story, that's what it was based on, inspired by, and I kind of bumped up against a brick wall in the new timeline. You know, I couldn't have my villain on a quest to destroy all the winged beings, because there's just 2 of them now and people don't hate on them so much. But I still had her prejudiced against Seph and Cloud, and ending up lusting after Seph, like Frollo did with Esmeralda. And it's kind of more prominent in the newer story. Like, I wasn't that comfortable in the old timeline doing it too much. And I'm more comfortable now, and there's a much more extended Hellfire-inspired scene and other antics she gets into. So the new timeline deals with that a lot more. And then I had to figure out a way to get her to still try to burn Cloud at the stake like she does in the original story. And I think it ended up being more convoluted and weird than in the original story. But I do like that in the new version, most of the townspeople are against her, and they're upset at Cloud being harmed, just, as they should be. But I don't think I've really run into issues when adapting other things for the new timeline. The other things have gone pretty smoothly. But I also had a super dark, unfinished sequel to the original story where they're uncovering more atrocities that this villain committed before her death. Her name is Kala Ansa, and she lives in the current timeline, so she can potentially cause more havoc later. Also because the current timeline isn't as dark. And I'm toying with various ideas for a sequel in the new timeline. It could go in 2 different directions. One thought would be she gets worse in prison and tries to have her daughter's son exorcised of the spell that Seph put on her, which is something she tries in the original timeline story, because she does not want to accept that there's no spell and that Seph is just awesome, and of course her daughter loves him. Or she could get worse in prison and decide Sephiroth should be king of Radiant Garden and try to recruit the Beagle Boys to help her. I actually did this very silly parody of Be Prepared, where she's singing about her plan with 2 of them. And I don't know if such a story could ever be serious without destroying the magic of that type of silliness. But I ponder on it anyway. Maybe I should just make it funny. But I don't know if then that would, kind of destroy the seriousness of my original story in the new timeline. And let's see, I call that one We Look to You Still, because I wanted another line from the same song, but I didn't want to call it God Help the Outcast Redux, because it is very, very different from the original story. But I still wanted to show that there was a connection there. And I don't know, that might be better just to leave it as the silly parody and not try to write that story, the sequel story, if it's just going to be funny. Another difference is the Restoration Committee is more important in the current timeline. I barely used them in the old one, which is kind of weird. It's like Cloud drifted away from them as his friends as he became closer to Sephiroth, and I don't like that. They're still on very friendly terms with Cloud in the new timeline, and for the most part they seem okay with Sephiroth too. Merlin's kind of almost an advisor, a mentor figure to Sephiroth in some ways. And Leon's around a lot. Aerith is living with Tifa. We don't really know what's going on with the KH Tifa. Like, people have these whole ideas that I guess Seph and Tifa aren't real. They're just representing parts of Cloud's personality as light and dark. And it's certainly true that at least KH2 tries to make that look the way it is for Seph, and yet Birth by Sleep clearly shows Seph is an actual person, that he was around as a hero in like 10 years before KH1, when Cloud would have been like 6 or 8 or something. And in the Japanese, Zack makes it clear that Seph is a hero and he wants to be like him, just like in FF. There's an interview with the creator, Tetsuya Nomura, and he says that outright. So, I mean, that kind of seems like it contradicts the idea that Seph is literally Cloud's darkness. I think it's just kind of, I don't know, kind of that he's a real person, but kind of embodies Cloud's darker traits, or that Cloud sees himself in Sephiroth. That's kind of the way I do it, that they see themselves in each other, and Seph is trying to help Cloud overcome the darkness that he fell to himself. but he's absolutely a real person. He's not something that formed from Cloud's darkness any more than Tifa formed from Cloud's light. So, yeah, Tifa's a real person, Sephiroth is a real person, and Aerith and Tifa live together. And eventually, when Seph and Cloud get things sorted out, Cloud moves in with Seph and Zack into Seph's house. And in the original timeline, everyone's parents except Cloud's deadbeat dad and Seph's biological parents are dead. In the current timeline, the other parents, the nice ones, are still alive, and they're found in a pocket dimension of Maleficence. And she had abducted them and other people, and they've been in there for years and years. And finally they're found when Seph and company is exploring Hollow Bastion. And there's like pocket dimensions inside paintings, which was an idea I got because of Mario 64, when he goes into the pocket dimensions inside the paintings in the castle. I really like the idea that KH Seph still has the support and emotional stability from having the kind adoptive parents, and that they're still around for him. You know, it's something you've never really seen at all in any canon version of Seph, or even an alternate universe Seph. And it's really kind of fun to play with, seeing how he interacts with his parents and they act with him. And I really enjoy that. And then there's Genesis and Angiel. I don't think I even mentioned them in the original timeline. But Angiel is repeatedly referenced, and Genesis is occasionally seen in the new timeline. He's a recurring villain. I'll admit, I don't really like Genesis. I took the opportunity of creating a KH one to kind of lean more into his petty hate and jealousy for Seph that drives me so crazy. Because, you know, it would be fine if that just happened when he lost his mind. That would be very sympathetic. But the problem is the FF Genesis hated Seph, or was jealous of him, at least even before the degradation seemed to start. So, I don't know. That's the way it looks to me and others, and I just have a real hard time figuring out how much is the degrading and how much is the real Genesis. So, the KH version, I can kind of play around with those things as much as I like. Make him darker if I want, without, you know, possibly treading wrong on the FF one's backstory and setup. That's what's kind of fun about creating a KH version of a character that's not currently in KH. And you know, I do plan on redeeming him. I don't think I'd have the heart not to. Maybe more for Seph's sake than Genesis's, because Seph is really upset and sad. But it may take longer. It may take a lot of stories to get to that, depending on how the current one I'm doing is going to go. I don't think it ends with his redemption. I'm kind of planning that he will try again some other times later to cause trouble. And I'm just starting to decide what Angiel's up to also. He's been looking for Genesis, and he makes his appearance in this story as well. Let's see, what is that story called? Well, and see, I can't seem to think of the name of it because I keep thinking of the one that came right before it with Genesis, which was called Who Can Stand Against Jealousy? Okay, yeah, I remember now. The one that the other one's called The Heart of Everything. Yeah, so those two stories are right next to each other, and they just segue into each other. So yeah, that's why I could only think of the first one's name because of that. But it's because they're really connected. You kind of have to read the first one before you read the multi-chapter I'm doing. And another thing I really enjoy about this timeline is having Seph meet lots of different Disney characters. I had a story in the old timeline where he met Mickey, Donald, and Goofy. I've heavily updated it for the current timeline. a lot of the conversation was kept, but I expanded on it, and I also removed a subplot that I didn't like, where Seph seems kind of prejudiced against the animals, and I didn't like that at all, because that's not the way I see the KH Seph. And so I wanted to take that out. In canon, he doesn't show any indication of prejudice against Donald and Goofy, and so I didn't want to have that in there. So I removed that whole subplot. And I've also done stories about him meeting Belle and Ursula and Hades, Frozen Crew, Magnifico from Wish, and stranger ones like Winnie the Pooh and Mary Poppins. I promise it makes sense in context, really. Now, Mary's especially fun because I got this idea that Seph is the only person who can start to make her visibly cross. They don't get along. They don't see eye to eye. Each thinks the other is arrogant. Seph doesn't like that she calls herself practically perfect, because that is just like, what? And she doesn't like that he will just wantonly break some of the rules of the universe, like he goes world hopping, which is certainly implied in canon, that he can just make portals and go to other worlds. So I run with that. And I also, of course, have the idea, which is supported by canon in both KH and FF, that transformation magic doesn't work on him. So when he goes to a world like the Lion King world, he's just like, no, I'm staying who I am. And his will is strong enough that he stays human. And the Lion King world, he actually accidentally broke the magic curse over the land that was causing people to turn into animals. One of these days I need to finish the story where that happens. It was funny. Rafiki thinks it's a good thing. And Timon is kind of weirded out by people. But it was funny. But Mary Poppins doesn't like that at all, even though she herself doesn't even follow that rule either to transform, because I just can't see it of her. And she talks to the animals as she is, so she doesn't really have any need to do that transformation junk. So Seph and Mary, despite of all their problems, they also respect each other because they know they're good people just trying to help. And it's so much fun comparing and contrasting them in the stories where they meet. I just did a story. It's called The Measure of a Man, where Mary ends up involved in the Genesis situation, and she and Seph have a disturbing encounter with him. This is early in the timeline, so Seph's memories of it are blocked later. And there is an explanation for that in the story, but it's mainly so that I won't be retconning stories that come later. Mary figures he'll remember eventually because, he's Seph. And he will, of course. And then I'll write a story about that. And Kingdom Hearts is such an amazing, fun, unique crossover. I mean, where else can you have Tigger sing the wonderful thing about Tiggers at Sephiroth, of all people, and have it somehow make canonical sense? That's kind of epic. So, yeah, I love Kingdom Hearts, but the main thing I love about it is this whole other Final Fantasy verse to play in. I just love the KH Seph. I love how he's different from the FF Seph and get the same on some things. It's so much fun. I love that they made his wings blue, and I just wish I could find merchandise where they do the KH2 design, because I just adore these other wings. And this is my Setsunoko made custom Seph plush. I just love him. As you can see, he's very loved, and some things have fallen off. But yeah, totally adore him. And I'm looking forward to continuing his adventures in my KH verse. And I hope at least some of you will be along for the ride. So, this is Lucky Ladybug. And see you next time. Thanks for watching.